In 1994, here in the newsroom of Newsday, I was asked to interview Dr. William Masters on the day of his retirement. I got him on the telephone and wrote only a small story then, but I realized that it had to be a much bigger story about Masters and his research partner, Virginia Johnson. An eternal story about a man and a woman who studied sex and love, became world famous, got married and divorced after 20 years, and no one really knew why. Bill Masters was a tough, ambitious, hard-driving doctor, probably the best doctor in St. Louis, certainly in the OBGYN field.
God may have created the heavens and earth, but he's not an obstetrician.
He was also a fertility expert as well.
We've been trying for 6 months, since the wedding night.
And there were couples who were having difficulty conceiving, looking to have a baby, and he would help them.
So you have intercourse regularly?
Pretty much like rabbits.
Honey.
And it's actually out of that work that kind of helped inspire his interest in sexuality and understanding how the body works.
There are libraries on how babies are born, and not a single study on how babies are made.
I think the most important thing to understand with Masters is his ambition.
We are doctors, for Christ's sakes, and I simply want to answer the question, what happens to the body during sex?
Behind all that ambition was a man who had a troubled childhood, who was very much determined to make a name for himself. He wanted to win a Nobel Prize.
I want to make my name in uncharted territory. I want a Nobel Prize.
And I think that ambition, the hurt from his own childhood, were some of the fuels that drove Bill Masters to become the famous character that he did indeed become.
Please join me in welcoming to the Distinctive Voices podium, Thomas Maier.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. The beginning of my book starts with Mary Virginia Eshelman in Golden City, Missouri, 1939. And of course, when you're doing this type of book, you have to ask a lot of pretty bold and probably inappropriate questions. And I obviously had to ask her, when was the first time that you had sex? How did you lose your virginity? Bear in mind, I'm talking to the woman probably knows more about human sexuality than any woman out in America. And she's told me the story of a boy with fiery red hair, is how she described it. And as the father of 3 sons, 2 of whom have fiery red hair, my ears particularly went up with that. But she wouldn't tell me his name. And I eventually found a fellow named Lowell Pugh, who is the owner of the only funeral home in Golden City, population 800, the prairie hay capital of the world is how they fancy themselves. And he told me the story of Virginia Johnson, the girl who lived 5 miles outside of Golden City. You can imagine how small a town that is, and you live 5 miles outside. And that he identified the boy with fiery red hair as a fellow named Gordon Garrett. In fact, he sent me a copy of the high school yearbook. And in that book, they predicted that Mary Virginia Eshelman would get married to Gordon Garrett. And she almost did. In fact, about 3 days ago, I had another conversation with her, and she told me that she regretted that she didn't get married to him. But her mother wanted big things for Virginia. They were tired. This was the Depression. This 1939, the end of the Depression, living on this farm. They had come out to California. Things didn't work out for them. They went back home to Missouri, and she wanted her daughter to go to the big city, and so did Virginia. And Gordon was a farm boy, so she wound up leaving Golden City to create the life that she would acquire as eventually this great sex and love expert. In many ways, her story is kind of like a modern-day Pygmalion story. As I mentioned, she didn't know anything about this stuff. And what part of her charm, her natural native instinct about human nature, her personal charisma, her ambitiousness. When she met Masters, she finally found the stage that she had been looking for all her life. And Masters gave her an equality in their relationship that really was sui generis, as they say, one of its kind. It was the type of thing that most doctors would not do. He gave her credit. She began essentially as a secretary, then as an assistant, then as a associate, and eventually as a partner. So that when their book finally came out, their first book, she shared the byline with Masters. Her whole story, in a way, was a search for love. At the end of my book, Virginia Johnson is shocked. The biggest shock of her life is that she's ready to get rid of Bill Masters. She's been in this loveless relationship. She feels that she had better divorce him, otherwise she's never going to find love. And it was right around that same time that she was introduced to a woman named Dodie, who was the sister of Bill Masters' college roommate. Now, as I explain in the book, you meet Dodie early in the book because Bill Masters, before he got married the first time, wanted to get married to Dodie. And there was a misunderstanding between the two of them, and they never got married. So here he is 50 years later. He decides on Christmas Eve, he lets Virginia know, after the family goes home, the grown kids leave with their kids, they go upstairs to the bedroom, and he tells Virginia, I want a divorce. And she's shocked because, among other things, she's ready to get rid of him. But what I was really amazed by was not only did he get married to Dodie, the beloved Dodie, 50 years later, but she decides 50 years later to go looking for the boy with fiery red hair. And she does. And in my research, I found Gordon Garrett's two sisters who told me how around about 2001, Virginia went looking for Gordon Garrett. And that's the end of my book. And I won't ruin it for you. You'll have to read it. Thank you very much for having me.
My research showed how Masters and Johnson challenged the theories of Sigmund Freud and how you, Hefner, helped finance some of their work.
I'd agree with Masters and Johnson are the people who brought people into the lab and actually filmed them and observed them, which is
brought them in and wired them up.
Yeah, on the face of it, that seems so ludicrously funny to me that and absurd that I find it hard to see it anything but humorously, and yet they put out a very serious book about it.
Let's not remember this. Masters and Johnson have taken a lot of
pasting.
Yes, from old Calcutta to parodies of all kinds, because they were the first ones that had the guts, and it really was the guts to research in real detail the physiology of sex. One of the most important aspects of our lives that we knew literally nothing about.
But the objection is that the minute you try to observe it in the laboratory, you defeat the whole thing.
Yes, but it didn't work out that way. There are certain physiological phenomena that you can discover. They did discover. Their book, Human Sexual Response, which became a bestseller, has very important work in it.
It wasn't until 2009 that my biography, Masters of Sex, finally appeared. The book party was held in Manhattan. It included a panel discussion with writer Gay Talese, my Newsday friend Laurie Garrett, and Dr. Robert Kolodny, who had once worked for Masters and Johnson.
Prior to Masters and Johnson, whether it be in the realm of sociology with Kinsey, or whether it be in the realm of religion for literally hundreds of years, or in the realm of Freudian psychology, sex was relegated to these areas. It was Masters and Johnson who really brought medicine into the fray of sexuality. Ultimately, though, my book deals with that old song that Sinatra used to sing. It's a Cole Porter lyric that says, "What is this thing called love?" Clinically, Masters and Johnson attempted to answer that question. And yet, their personal story, at the beginning of the book, both of them, you're introduced to their early loves. And at the end of the book, they go back looking for their lost loves. The whole idea of yearning for love and what love is all about was often what motivated married couples to seek help in the first place. And I think that's a leitmotif that I think adds a degree of eternalness to the narrative. So with that, Laurie, I'd like to once again pass the baton, and perhaps Mr. Talese may have a few thoughts to kick in.
The New York Times wrote 2 different reviews about Masters of Sex, and soon Hollywood was calling. I wanted to see my book made into a movie, but I was talked into making it into a television drama. I'm glad I listened.
The thing that was most incredible, I think, was finding this story to begin with. Tom Maier's book was an incredible revelation.
His book, it reads like a novel and tells kind of a sprawling epic story of the sexual revolution, but also an incredibly intimate story of a very unconventional relationship between a man and a woman.
So this, though, is really the first time I think anyone's taken recent history and turned it into a TV show, so that you're actually watching real people who did real things.
Michelle, before we get sort of into the nuts and bolts of the show, I would love to start by asking where did the germ of the idea to create this series come from for you guys?
Well, I'll have to point down the row to Sarah Timmerman, who has been my producing partner in this, who actually saw a book review of, well, Sarah can tell the story.
I'd come across a book review of Tom Maier's extraordinary book, and felt like it could be a mini-series, felt like it could be an ongoing series. We knew it wasn't a movie, and I sent it to Michelle right away. And we just both saw it and felt that it couldn't possibly be a story told in 2 hours, and started there.
From the producer's standpoint, I came across this book now almost 5 years ago, and I had a long friendship and working relationship with Michelle Ashford, and we had made a deal together to find something to develop, and I came across this book and optioned it with my partner, Carl Beverly, and I sent it to Michelle right away and said, we have to figure this one out together, and she immediately saw the potential in it too.
So she read the review and said, I think we should read this book. It sounds fascinating. And I thought, oh, I don't know. I mean, as a series? And she said, no, I think so. So we read the book, and it was astounding because Tom Maier, who wrote the book, it's a wonderful book, interviewed Virginia Johnson, and she told him things that she'd never told anybody about their careers, but also about their personal lives, which were very complicated and really interesting. And so I read the book and I thought, oh my God, that is a series. It's so complicated. It goes on and on and on. There's all these different chapters, literally, but also in terms of figuratively, these different periods in their lives. And so I thought this is pretty exciting because it's pretty rare in television that you can see a whole series from beginning to end, before you've even started.
So we started discussing whether this would be a 2-hour story, and immediately we knew it couldn't possibly be told in 2 hours. And then we started thinking whether you could do it as a mini-series, and then we felt it couldn't possibly be told in 10 hours. And so we landed on the long, the long novelistic version of it, which is what it truly requires. When you look at Masters and Johnson's story, it's one that spans decades, and it's also, of course, the story of the sexual revolution, and it wants to be 6 seasons, which is what we hope to we hope if we get really lucky, we'll end up making.
Stretch the imagination. We did talk to a couple other people. We talked to HBO and FX. I think HBO was just not that interested, and FX couldn't do it because they have advertisers, and the amount of nudity on this show would have been prohibitive. So we're good friends with David Nevins. He got it immediately. He said yes, and he'd just gotten his job at Showtime, so it was a very happy marriage. The movie business has changed radically. And these kind of intimate, personal, dramatic stories are much harder to do. As a result, everyone is flocking to television, where it turns out everybody actually does want to see those stories. So it's just a happy accident that it all sort of went our direction. I spent a lot of time working for network television, which has its own upside. But I did get to a point where I felt really stifled as a writer. I felt like I kept hitting a ceiling, and I didn't really understand why, but it felt very dissatisfying. And actually, that was the year that The Sopranos came on, and I remember looking at that and thinking, oh my God, this is what you can do. And from then on, I've actually worked in cable almost exclusively.
I think that we were lucky to wind up in Showtime at a moment, I think, where people were feeling like the anti-hero had been thoroughly explored in cable television. And I think that part of what people respond to in our series is that, you know, for all the amazing anti-heroes in recent years that are the centers of so many shows, I think our show feels like something that people relate to, because our characters are neither good nor bad. They're human, and they are struggling. And I think the things they're struggling with about the most, you know, intimate parts of their lives are totally relevant to an audience today.
My attorney, Scott Schweimer, put together a contract so that I'd be rewarded with both money and producer credit. Each episode said the show was based upon my book. But from now on, I'd be sharing credit for Masters of Sex with many others.
Masters of Sex is an American period drama television series that premiered on September 29, 2013, on Showtime. It was developed by Michelle Ashford and loosely based on Thomas Maier's biography Masters of Sex.
As Michelle wrote the pilot script, I answered her questions over the phone and with emails. She eventually assembled a talented group of co-writers, including one who wrote a hit Broadway musical. We generally agreed on most things. Unlike many authors, I made sure I remained as positive as possible, a cheerleader for our show. And Michelle and Sarah were always gracious in return.
The study of sex is the study of the beginning of all life.
Honestly, it came to me through the New York Times book review. There was a glowing review of the book, and it was immediately clear from the review, and then abundantly clear from the book itself, that there was a great story for television in it.
Science holds the key. Yet we sit huddled in the dark like prudish cavemen, filled with shame.
So we talked about this story together, and Michelle miraculously figured out how to condense as much of real events into that first hour as we did, because the pilot covers the Masters and Johnson's first. It covers a lot of the work that they did in their first year together, and we cover it in an hour. And we covered their meeting and embarking on the study together, and on the sort of unusual proposal that he makes to her at the end, which sets the whole series in motion. And in truth, that didn't happen for a year in their working relationship. And we were a little reluctant to get there so fast. And our friends, led, especially David Nevins at Showtime, said, you got to do it because it sets up the series. And we resisted, and ultimately we said, David, you're 1,000% right. And it worked beautifully in the pilot. And so it's been a real collaboration for us with Sony and with Showtime, and a great creative partnership.
Well, we're in the trenches here, so we're the ones who have to actually make this happen. So all I can think about is, oh my gosh, there's so much story to tell, and how do we do it well? How do we do it in an entertaining way, but also very faithful to the real story? So that's really what's on our mind, I think.
You show sex, but sex has been seen on TV a lot, so that's not particularly groundbreaking. There is a lot of very frank discussion about sex, which I think is unusual. And so
it'll be curious to see how that kind of goes over.
With the pilot script in hand, Michelle and Sarah moved on to putting a cast together along with an Oscar-winning director and crew. By March 2012, they were filming the first episode of Masters of Sex on Long Island, the same place where I wrote the book.
Oh, yes. It's an ongoing story. I mean, we have decades ahead of us, so it's...
Masters and Johnson had a 30-plus year life together and career, so we have a lot of story to tell. And it is the same characters.
In March 2012, the pilot for Masters of Sex was filmed on Long Island. If Showtime liked it, they would approve the whole series.
Quiet, please.
I was invited one night onto the set, along with my wife Joyce and son Andrew, to watch the filming. After dark, we arrived at the Sands Point Preserve, once the home, ironically, of Newsday's founding publisher, and now a public park. Outside there were huge trailers filled with equipment. Inside, the castle-like building had been turned into a working studio. We had a lot of fun being shown around and watching an opening scene being made.
Hi there, Joyce. Hey, True. How we doing?
Good. We're on the set right now. We're supposed to be at Washington University right now, where the president of the university is announcing Dr. Masters coming.
That night was the first time I met Sarah and Michelle face to face. I also met the pilot's director, John Madden, who had won an Oscar for Shakespeare in Love. We watched as Madden explained the opening scene to a group of extras working with actors Michael Sheen and Beau Bridges.
William Masters is played by Michael Sheen. They're on table one over here. Wayne is standing, so just so you can see where he is. I'm Beau Bridges, obviously. Okay, so now the form of the scene is that essentially this introductory speech, and there's certain reaction.
When finished, the opening scene would look like this.
In the Midwest, the highest standard, so high that even our friends on the coast are now paying attention. As the man that we're honoring this evening is a visionary in every sense of the word. I've known him since he was a resident here at Washington. He was opinionated and hard-headed even then. His constant innovations to obstetric surgery have earned him dominance in the field. If there's one thing I hear during the course of my day, it's thanks to him we have a family. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. William Masters.
Beau Bridges, playing Dr. Masters' boss, would win 2 Emmy nominations for this role.
I am a man of science.
Later that night, we watched this dramatic scene with Lizzie Kaplan.
Ethan, let go of me.
No, tell me. You can't answer, can you? How many times have we slept together?
Just come back inside with me.
Oh, it's not that difficult.
I'm sorry that I hurt you. That was never my intention.
That's enough! Fine, we're lab coat, Virginia. Run the study, play doctor all you want. At the end of the day, all you really are is a whore.
Before we left that night, Michelle said Michael Sheen would like to meet me and talk about the real Bill Masters. The selection of Michael Sheen as the lead actor was a welcome surprise. A few months earlier, Showtime announced that actor Paul Bettany would play Dr. Masters, but that didn't work out.
Michael Sheen was initially not available. He was in Hamlet, and we were terribly disappointed, and we cast around for another way to go, and ultimately we waited for him. We pushed our production. We had met Lizzie. The minute we met Lizzie, we thought that she just embodied so much of the spirit of Virginia Johnson, so that was thrilling. And then we ended up pushing our production until Michael became available, because there was no, who else could play this role?
I would imagine a pretty monumental undertaking to say, okay, we're going to make this show and then embark on the quest to cast these two lead roles. I mean, in a lot of ways, the show lives or dies on Masters and Johnson. Can you talk a little bit about sort of what you set out to do when you were looking for actors?
So we did embark on this really curious process, and we were very, very lucky.
Michael was actually, I think, in Hamlet when we first...
Yes, I was doing Hamlet.
Big
What were you doing?
I was doing a little movie
Please, if you could do a few lines.
Hot Tub Time Machine. More, a little Hamlet or a little Hot Tub Time?
What does that say about our culture? Hamlet, nothing, tumbleweed. Hot Tub Time Machine. That's you. That's you.
Well,
it's a crime of civilization. That's you. Yeah, clap yourselves.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
The open-ended nature of working in television.
Yes. Oh, yes. But because I've done a few things that are about real people and real events and that kind of stuff, I did feel like with this, it was almost kind of the perfect combination of, on the one hand, a kind of pre-existing structure where you've got the facts of what happened in their lives and it's real people. And that's always, I find, a very interesting kind of springboard and a platform to work from. But at the same time, there was such, even though we know certain things and you can go on the internet and find out certain things about them, they were such private people and such secretive, mysterious people that by necessity you have to invent as well. And they're not kind of the sort of people like other characters I've played where they're so recognizable and the audience, a lot of audience will know what they look like and sound like and all. It's not kind of like that. So it's a sort of perfect combination of things that you have to work with that are already there and invention.
Going after this job, it was proving a lot of stuff to myself. And John Madden, who directed our pilot, who really championed me, and as well as these two lovely ladies, I think all three of you guys saw me in this role well before I saw myself in the role. And my audition with John Madden was 3 hours long and full hair and makeup, and we basically read the entire script. And I remember walking away from that audition thinking, that is the best audition I have ever had, and I am never getting that part.
And the truth is, it didn't really require an audition at all, because we had gone out to dinner and just felt so much that Lizzie totally got who this woman was, and such a deep understanding of her. And we left, and Madden, it's true, we just were all just floored. We just knew we found her. And John said, the audition was never about comedy versus drama. It's like, the only question is she irredeemably contemporary, was the one thing he asked. And the only point of even doing an audition was to kind of put her in period clothes and see if her contemporariness would sort of...
And you don't mean like sweatpants, period, clothes.
It was really like, no, not sweatpants, period, clothes. It was like, would you buy her in 1957? But there was no question that she was a dramatic.
Sarah and Michelle chose Caitlin Fitzgerald to play Master's wife, Libby, and actor Teddy Sears to play a doctor who became part of the sex study. But the most inspired casting choice was Annalee Ashford, who played a prostitute.
For the show, I read the pilot, and I was actually auditioning for the role of Jane, which Helena York ended up playing. And I wore like a pink button-up shirt that was my sister's, because I take my sister's clothes. So it was really like something I'd never wear. Anyways, it was buttoned up, and I wore pearl earrings because she's a secretary, very prim and proper. But every time I'd read the script, I'd keep going back to the scene with the hooker. I was obsessed with the hooker. So I actually kept reading it just in case I ever got to read the hooker. So I read for Jane, got all the way to the train, and got a phone call from Bernie Telsey's office to come back, and it was John and Michelle. And I came back, I took off my earrings, I unbuttoned my shirt as far down as I could, and I gave her a Brooklyn accent just for that one read, and I did a cold read. And then you guys called again. It was, I still can't believe it.
Good. Did you try these?
No, arousal states for clients.
Other actresses auditioned for the role, but Annalee brought an amazing charm that made her one of the stars of the show.
Having sat there, Annalee, we had watched a lot of actresses, and we were in New York at Bernie Telsey's, which is, there's just one fantastic actor after another coming through the door. But Annalee was so rip-roaring funny. I mean, we just couldn't believe it. We saw it when you auditioned for Jane, and we thought, well, that's all wrong, but she would be such a good hooker. And it went from there.
Other scenes for the pilot were shot around the New York area, including a house in Huntington, which served as Master's home. My son Reed joined me when they filmed at Jamaica Hospital in Queens, replicating the hospital where Masters and Johnson worked.
I'm not sure why you chose me,
Instinct.
even though I don't have a college degree or know anything about biology or anatomy.
I can teach you.
If you picked a female MD, she'd know all of this already.
A woman doctor would never jeopardize her career on such a risky subject.
You're jeopardizing yours.
The study is not approved. So yes, my career is in jeopardy. I'm going ahead anyway.
How can I help?
A few months after this was filmed, Showtime took its own risk and approved a 12-episode season of Masters of Sex. They were taking a big gamble on a historical drama that could be easily misunderstood by the critics. I was thrilled they were taking this chance.
The man that we're honoring this evening is a visionary in every sense of the word.
And soon I was on a plane to Hollywood with my family to watch more of my book being made into a
we're on the
TV
set
show.
of Masters of Sex. Take one.
When we got to Hollywood during the winter of 2013, everything was warm and inviting. We stopped at museums, had lunch, fended off the press, and even gave a speech or two. I was particularly excited to be in Hollywood.
Hollywood, the city of the cinema. Woohoo! I love you. I adore you.
But the main business was at the Sony Studios, where Masters of Sex was being made.
Ready, guys? Pictures up.
Mark.
Hello, my name is Lizzie Kaplan. I play Virginia Johnson on Showtime's newest series, Masters of Sex. We're here on set. I can't tell you what's about to happen, but I can tell you you're probably going to like it.
And action!
We arrived at the studio where they once made Singing in the Rain and The Wizard of Oz. We were treated royally, especially by the cast and crew, who acted like we were old friends. We were escorted to the working set and sat in director's chairs like we were some big shots.
Marjorie, how have you been?
The place where we sat had been previously used in a cafeteria scene. Part of the fun was watching the series being filmed and wondering how it would look later on TV.
Don't you have that backwards?
Of course, we acted like we were the real stars and that we owned the joint. Drew did his homework, Taylor checked his messages, and Reed listened to music. I was worried sick until the cameras started rolling. The real leading lady was Joyce, who soon figured out everything. On the seat she found the yellow papers listing each scene that day. She made sure they were all G-rated. Earlier in the day, we all viewed the finished pilot, which provided a few awkward surprises for the boys and their mother. Joyce and I also wanted to see the writer's room. Up on the boards, showrunner Michelle Ashford placed each scene for each episode. Joyce pointed out the season's surprise finale. The gang had to sit outside while I joined a table reading of the script with a cast, but that was interrupted when Michael Sheen, coming from an important scene on the set, suddenly got sick.
This scene is the first time Masters and Johnson start the research with one another.
It's when she puts his hand on her boob.
It becomes clear to Virginia in that moment that she's willing to put all of her reservations aside for the good of the study.
It seems important that it's Virginia who makes that offer. There's a sense of them both moving into this kind of brave new world together.
I remember Michael was really sick that day. So about 4 minutes after he touches my bare breast for the first time, he went and threw up in his trailer. Tried not to take that personally.
With my family waiting outside, I remembered Joyce's big wish to meet actress Allison Janney, a favorite from The West Wing. And voila, I asked Allison and made it happen. From our time on the set, we got a real sense of how Hollywood magic happens. During breaks, we looked around at 1950s furniture and rooms replicated for the show.
Down the hall is the room where Masters and Johnson did a lot of the field study with actual volunteers.
From our seats behind the directors, we got a good idea of how things are filmed. At one point, Sarah Timberman came by to say hello and watch, and later so did Showtime chieftain David Nevins, who joked with the boys. Eventually, we learned some inside secrets from this production.
There is a heck of a lot of information on this wall. This is everything from different episodes. It starts with the research that happened at Washington University. This was in the 50s, where our show takes place, and this was a little bit later. And real photos from fittings, for instance, here, Lizzie Kaplan in this dress. It's a little too graphic for the show, especially for, you know, these type shots on screen. And so we remade it in a more cleaner fabric, much more solid with, you know, highlights of white. So we have, you know, that sort of thing, and then we have the ladies in white next to them, the nurses and the doctors. So that's the kind of dichotomy of the show.
No, the wardrobe, the costumes, it all begins with that, really, for me. I don't really feel like the character until I step into the clothes.
Anne really is like, she's like, she almost functions like a writer and a cast member. It's such a large percentage of finding the right way to perform the person when you have on the right clothes. It just, you look in the mirror and you're kind of halfway there.
Hello. This is my peach ensemble. Oops. Oh. Did I mess it up? You always want to undress Betsy. You always want to undress Barbara. I think that's kind of the key to Barbara. What we'll probably do is just go a wee tighter in the back here.
A little bit of junk in my vintage trunk.
Oh, hi. Didn't see you there.
Sheen Black, and I'm doing Lizzie's makeup for Masters of Sex.
Is it blowing your mind?
For this particular show, we are doing Lizzie's character in a very natural way, Life magazine, as opposed to Vogue, if you will.
If you will.
It takes me about 30 minutes to do Lizzie's makeup. Oftentimes, because a person's face reveals so much, you want to do subtle things with their makeup to create what is going on internally. Something that helps an actor with their character. I'm just going right into the lash. Even though the 50s had a lot of liner, I do like to keep Lizzie's liner very thin because Lizzie's eyes are very large and very strong anyway, so I don't want to overdo them. We go very light with the mascara because Lizzie's got such long lashes. I usually like Lizzie to do her own lashes because she does them well.
That's what I call good enough.
Oh, look, I always have to cover Lizzie's tattoo.
I got the tattoo in that spot because I thought it would be easy to cover up, but as it turns out, there's no real spot that's easy to cover up. I guess I'm done with this phase of makeup. Let's go down to the other side of the trailer for some hair, shall we? This is my favorite part of the morning.
Exactly. She loves to help me take off the rollers. I'm gonna give Lizzie, I call it like a modified page boy. When I'm done, it has to look like a hairdresser didn't do her hair.
It's a lot of building it up and tearing it back down again. The real Virginia Johnson had some fairly unfortunate hairstyles.
Don't breathe.
Not easy! We did it! 17 hours later, ready to start phase 2 of getting ready. It never ends.
Really, one of the most indispensable people on our show is our prop master. Our prop master is named Jeff Johnson, who's a genius. The trickiest thing was this thing called Ulysses. William Masters designed this thing, and they called it Ulysses after there was a Kirk Douglas movie at the time called Ulysses, which is about a giant cyclops, a one-eyed monster. And this thing looked like a one-eyed monster, and it had a light that shined through it. It was like this glass cylinder, and you put it up there and you took pictures. So there is no picture of this thing anywhere. There's descriptions of it, and they know that they used it, but so we have to go to a prop guy and say, all right, now you have to make a glass phallus with a camera attached to it. And he was like, yes, I'm so excited. This is the best job he's ever had. I mean, because it's so weird. So anyway, so that's how we get around a lot of the machinery. He does a ton of research. He brings it to us, we talk about it, and then, but it's really, honestly, it's his vision. I'm not sure what it is you're doing.
I'm wiring Mr. Mello to monitor pulse, heart rate, and brainwaves to illuminate to my patients and to the general community what happens to the body during sexual stimulation and orgasm.
There's a lot of frank discussion of sex in our show, and we still blush sometimes when we talk about the subject matter.
We're the two biggest prudes.
We're the two biggest prudes in the world.
Eventually, we found our own secrets to the production, especially a thing called craft services. Inside the set, we discovered this treasure trove of food, candies, donuts, and other goodies. Apparently, stars like Michael Sheen knew about craft services as well. With season 1 all filmed, the producers needed an introduction that captured the essence of the show. They tried several versions before deciding on the right one.
The title, I didn't really know what that was going to be until I saw that the visuals that they had cut together for the title sequence, which, for those who haven't seen the show, is this sort of barrage of double entendre visual images having to do with sex. And when I saw it and I saw the pace of it and the flow of it, it just felt like this would be a tango. So that's where I parked myself and got out the accordion.
Just before the premiere, Virginia Johnson died. She knew about the upcoming TV show about her life, but never got to see it.
Award-winning sex researcher Virginia Johnson has died. She was one half of the pioneering team of Masters and Johnson. As Jan Crawford reports, they brought a taboo subject into the open in the name of science.
In the late 1950s, Virginia Johnson was a twice-divorced mother of two with no college degree, working as a secretary at Washington University in St. Louis. There, she met obstetrician William Masters and became his lover and research assistant.
They made it acceptable in polite society to talk about aspects of sexuality by using the medical terms, the clinical terms. And they really changed the whole conversation in America about sex.
Journalist Thomas Maier wrote their biography, Masters of Sex.
Their studies underline the power of female sexuality, and she was a big part of that.
Their research, now the subject of a Showtime series, was possible because Johnson personally recruited hundreds of women to have sex in their St. Louis clinic while hooked up to machines that measured their physical responses. It was the first time scientific methods were applied to the study of sex. Their 1966 book, Human Sexual Response, became a bestseller and made them household names. They authored several more books, but one of their last, released during the height of the AIDS epidemic, was condemned for its alarmist tone and misinformation about HIV transmission.
When the future of a population is perhaps to some degree at stake, then I think that there has to be a very definitive, very strong stand taken to reverse those years of complacency.
The couple married in 1971, but Masters left her for another woman and divorced Johnson after 20 years of marriage. He died in 2001.
She became really the genius behind their sex therapy, which revolutionized the way in which sex clinics throughout America and throughout the world treated married couples that were having difficulties in the bedroom.
Johnson died Wednesday at an assisted living facility in St. Louis. She was 88 years old. For CBS This Morning, Jan Crawford, Washington.
Lizzie Kaplan had wanted to meet Virginia, but in failing health, she didn't want to get involved. Virginia once told me she wanted actress Joanne Woodward to play her in another production that didn't get off the ground. But from now on, the world would get to know Virginia through the acting of Lizzie Kaplan and through the brand new TV show based on my book. The Long Tango to premiere night in September 2013 culminated with a huge party at the Morgan Library. Our son Drew flew in from London to join his brothers Reed and Taylor and my wife Joyce at this swank event in Manhattan.
I want the truth.
For days, all of New York seemed abuzz about Masters of Sex.
I don't like where this is going.
Ads were plastered on buses down Fifth Avenue, were found in the subway system, and across the front page of the New York Times. Even the TV show's cast members were willing to give my book a plug.
Being the star of a Showtime show. I've been anticipating it coming on TV for so long now. I read the script 2 years ago, so it feels like maybe for the first time I'm ready for the public to receive it.
Read the book.
Yeah, the book's amazing. I highly recommend it.
Tell all of our viewers that.
Yes, read the book.
And
the whole cast and crew came out that night. For weeks beforehand, Showtime promoted Masters of Sex all over the country, including with a pop-up pavilion set up downtown.
We're here at the Masters and Johnson exhibit inspired by the new Showtime original series, Masters of Sex. When William Masters and Virginia Johnson joined forces in the 1950s, their research ultimately transformed the way that sex was studied, taught, and enjoyed in America. So come with me and let's check it out. This display case holds some of the props from the set of Masters of Sex, including the Ulysses. Trust me, you're going to want to know what this thing does. This is a replica of the Masters and Johnson lab featuring machines like the original EEG machine. It scored an 80%. You can try it yourself if you go online to mastersofsexquiz.com and see how well you know Masters and Johnson.
Our visit to the pop-up pavilion a few days before the premiere was amazing to Joyce and myself. Taylor posed like he was Dr. Masters as we scouted out old photos and copies of my book.
Lastly, we have our screening room where you can see behind-the-scenes footage of Masters of Sex.
On premiere night, we met up with Reed, Taylor, and Drew, who gave me a tie clip with M&J initials on it to commemorate this special night. We were met at the Morgan Library by my sister Diane and her husband Kenny. With a copy of my book in hand, Diane would later follow Lizzie Kaplan into the ladies' room and get her to autograph it for my niece Lindsay, who loved Mean Girls. Before we went in, we tried to muster up as much cool as possible to let them know who was boss. The boys posed for photos and made sure Hollywood knew they were available. The Maier entourage took in the beauty of the Morgan Library and how it had been prepared for this party. It was fun watching the press interview and take photos of the cast and producers all dressed up. On this night, Caitlin Fitzgerald certainly didn't look like her drab and demure Libby Masters character.
Feel to be starring in Showtime where everything's kind of like you totally have carte blanche to really do whatever, I would say.
You know, when you sign the nudity waivers in your first contract, you get a little nervous about it because you're not sure what you're going to have to do. But I also think Showtime is kind of killing it right now, and their material is so good, and I'm so proud to be on this.
The Morgan was filled with other celebrities, big and small. Boys mingled with the stars like Teddy Sears, always friendly, who played one of the doctors in the cast. As the crowd gathered in the auditorium, Teddy and I said congratulations to each other. The Showtime and Sony executives on hand praised my book as the basis for their new show and asked me to take a bow. After the pilot was shown, the party began with a live DJ and many people milling about the museum. The Maier mob posed for official photos in Dr. Masters' living room. The star of the show, Michael Sheen, hobnobbed with the corporate brass before posing with the true big guys at the event. Our men joked with Nick Kroll and got themselves invited to the after-party party with the cast. In presenting Masters of Sex to the world, Showtime tried a variety of promotions.
I want to answer the question, what happens to the body during sex? Sex?
Yes.
How does it feel?
Women often confuse sex and love.
This is the future. It's not medicine.
I was faking.
Dangerous game you're playing.
With excitement. Fantastic.
Stimulation. Why would a woman fake an orgasm?
Usually so the woman could get back to whatever it is she'd rather be doing.
Get off that train of sin. Cause the devil is in you. Get off of that train of sin.
So please welcome Michael Sheen and Lizzie Kaplan.
After the premiere party, the stars went on a media tour. On ABC's The View, both Lizzie and Michael appeared together. They explained to America the importance of Masters and Johnson.
So Michael, the show is great, and for the sake of those perhaps under 30, tell us who
like
Masters,
myself.
like yourself, yes. Tell us who Masters and Johnsons were and why their research was so groundbreaking.
You're Dr. Masters.
I am Dr. William Masters.
And you are the research assistant in the beginning.
Yes,
Right.
yes. So
Yeah.
tell us why.
Well, William Masters was an OBGYN surgeon and a fertility expert in the mid-50s in St. Louis. And but his lifelong passion was to do a study on sex, which no one had done, really.
Right.
You know, actually watching people having sex and the physical manifestations of it in the body. This is why I have to be very careful about what I talk about. It's a slightly grey area.
Also in the...
Yes, exactly.
It's very revealing.
Did you guys know who they were? I mean...
I actually didn't. I feel like you've either studied them in school or you haven't, and I did not.
You lived through it.
Yeah.
They didn't teach. They really didn't teach it in school, but it opened a whole world of sex therapists, which we now take for granted. And it happened with Dr. Masters, who was shunned at the time. That's the excitement and the mystery.
Watching Barbara Walters here, I remember that she had interviewed the real Masters and Johnson 4 decades earlier.
Committed. May I ask each of you how many times each of you has been married?
I've been married. This is my second marriage.
This is my third. Well, then let me ask you what you mean by commitment and what makes one
That's a
commit. I
very
mean,
fair
one could look at
question.
you and say, aha, you know, you're supposed to be the great authority. You've been married 3 times.
Exactly. No, I had no idea.
Really?
I guess being British, because we're very uneducated.
And
all
you
that.
didn't need his advice, maybe.
I didn't need his advice. No, I needed a lot of advice. I mean, that's one of the sort of strange things about it is that we sort of think back to the 50s and, you know, no one was talking about sex. It was very taboo. There was no information about it. But in a kind of strange way, now we've come so far from that in some ways.
Yeah.
Now we're just, I mean, you were talking about it earlier on about the, the Super Bowl stuff and, over-sexualization of youngsters, and it's become such a kind of commercialized, branded thing now, We're inundated with images of sexuality. And now it seems like one of the problems is that we have a kind of idealized version from films and TV and ad commercials and stuff. And if we feel like, well, it's not like that for me. I don't look like that when I'm doing it. I don't make that face or whatever. That there's something wrong with us, that there's something lacking. And I think that's now the kind of new problem, as opposed to no information. There's almost too much of the wrong kind of information.
It also was for women. Nobody much cared if a woman had an orgasm or did or didn't and so on. And the whole business of women's... The whole business of women's sex was something that was discovered between Masters and Johnson.
Yes, they became these feminist heroes. Back before Masters and Johnson, everybody was believing what Freud said, and Freud said that there are two types of female orgasm. There's a clitoral orgasm. It's early in the morning, but I'm going to say clitoral. And that's for young girls to enjoy. And then later, when you become a mature woman, you have vaginal orgasms with your husband. Now, if you cannot achieve an orgasm vaginally with your husband, you were considered frigid and you had to enter into years and years of psychoanalysis, and your body was broken.
Wow.
Yeah. The guys were all right, though.
So this all changed with them.
This all changed. Well, Lizzie, Masters was this buttoned-up married man, and then he hired the sexy divorcee, and you guys wound up having an affair and getting married. How does the relationship evolve in the course of the show?
Well, I mean, it's not quite as black and white as they have this affair. I mean, they start taking on the scientific experiments with each other. Because they think that they can handle it better, they can separate emotions from science, which of course becomes a bit complicated. But they carry on this research with each other for 20 years before they get married. And actually, Virginia, my character, becomes very close friends with his wife while this is all going on. It's this very, very complicated, very layered situation.
And then they finally get married.
Yeah, they get married. Divorced. Well, they get married because Virginia was about to get married for the third time, and Masters knew that would really sabotage the study. And so they get married, but neither one of them ever really admitted that it was for romantic purposes.
One of the fascinating things about the relationship was that I don't think they even knew quite what the relationship was at any given time. It kept shifting and what the feelings were, because Masters was someone who found it very difficult to be vulnerable, to reveal what he was feeling. So I think the relationship between them became a reflection of that.
Yes, and Ginny said that she never loved any of her husbands. She never married for love.
I understand.
That's another movie.
Well, you all are great. You have to see this show. I think you'll really sort of be knocked out by it. So we're thanking Lizzie Kaplan and Michael Sheen. Masters of Sex premieres Sunday on Showtime, and we'll be right back.
Sex is nothing new for television, but the subject is front and center in the Showtime drama Masters of Sex. It tells the real-life story of Masters and Johnson, two groundbreaking researchers who changed the way America understands sex.
Now, given that every museum in the world is filled with art, created from this basic impulse, the greatest literature, the most beautiful music, the study of sex is the study of the beginning of all life. And science holds the key.
Science. Michael Sheen plays Dr. William Masters. Good morning to you, Michael Sheen. Should we call you Dr. Sheen?
Yes, please. Dr. Sheen, OBE.
Because you actually are a doctor.
I am. As research for the show, I actually became a doctor, mainly just when I was asked the question, what research did you do?
Yes.
I became a doctor. But it was an honorary doctorate at the University of Wales, so I won't do any examinations.
Well, that's good, because I've already had my exam. Thank you very much. Okay. But this is the thing about this series, because I've seen it. And the way it's approached is so clinical, because Dr. Masters really felt of sex as science. And that is not how most people look at it. He really wanted to know, how do men and women, how do we say this?
Have sex.
Have sex and get satisfaction.
Yes.
And get satisfaction from having sex.
Well, I think
Help me out here, Michael.
It was as alien territory as the moon was.
Because we didn't talk about it back then.
Because there were
in
no
the
reports
50s.
coming
Yes.
back. Exactly. I spoke to quite a few OBGYN surgeons who were at work at the time, and they said that when people came in and had problems with, you know, their sexual relationship, there was nothing they could refer to
Yes.
other than their own sex life.
Yes.
So that it was such a taboo, controversial. There was no platform to be able to discuss those things.
And it
but of
makes
course,
it-
the difference is between Masters wants to keep it clinical.
Yes.
The show itself, I think, shows that you can't compartmentalize it. You can't separate sex from emotion, psychology,
That's right.
vulnerability, intimacy.
That's
All those issues come up.
What did he find that was so groundbreaking about sex?
Well, the fact that it was studied at all, the fact that he had people who volunteered. To begin with, he had to work with prostitutes because there was nobody who would actually volunteer, because obviously it was fairly controversial work. And then most of his study was done in secret within the university hospital that he worked at in St. Louis. And so the fact that he was having people have sex in front of him and being monitored for the first time, he invented all kinds of... This is the area where it gets slightly tricky, because just for me to talk about it and describe it, I don't even know if it's allowed on
I know.
this time of
I know.
television.
That's why I'm sort of dancing around all the words, because it still makes so many people uncomfortable to discuss it.
Well, I mean, that's what the subject is.
Yeah.
You know, I think any discussion of sex or any depiction of sex and sexuality brings up all the kind of double standards that we have in our society. You know, you can talk about violence until the cows come home, but as soon as you start talking about sex, it all becomes very awkward and difficult, you know. And in the filming of the series, it was a similar thing. When I've done movies in the past, when you come to a sex scene of some kind, it can always be a little bit of a grey area.
Yeah.
Everyone's slightly uncomfortable about really pinning down what you're going to do and how it's going to happen.
And how you're going to do it,
But with this show, you know, it's scene after scene. It's not just once every now and again. So there had to be very clear parameters about how you go about it, and you had to be very communicative and talk about it.
What was your did you have any concerns when they approached you about doing this?
Well, I suppose my main concerns at the time wasn't about the subject matter, because that was what I found very exciting, the idea that obviously everyone's interest would be piqued if it was a show that had sex and sexuality involved in it. But what I was really interested by and excited by was how the approach of it, how intelligent and kind of sophisticated the approach was. And how much it seemed to want to really explore the subject, and excited about the character. You know, you put this man who is so withheld, so controlled, so you know, keeping everything back.
Almost.
And you put him in this situation where he's trying to keep everything separate, and of course it's just going to be devastation. Of course it's not going to happen. We're going to see him unravel, which is exciting.
Congratulations. Continued
you.
success to you.
Thank you very
Michael
much.
Sheen, for coming. Masters of Sex airs Sunday night on Showtime.
Amy Poehler.
Eventually, the name Masters of Sex became famous in America. At that year's Golden Globe Awards, where Masters was nominated for Best Drama, a room full of stars heard the two hosts crack a joke about the hit show.
And what a year for television. A lot of nominated shows tonight are actually on Netflix this year.
Netflix, big deal.
House of Cards, Orange is the New Black. Masters of Sex is the degree I got from Boston College.
I want to talk to you about the brilliant show you're in, Masters of Sex.
Oh, yeah.
On the talk show circuit, there was plenty of giggles about the subject
one of my
matter.
favourite actors, but you have some quite risque scenes in the show.
Never ever thought I'd have to do things like that at my age, that would come my way, but it did.
Oh, it came your way, all right.
Oh, my Lord. So I had a very interesting phone conversation with my mother, who calls and says, she saw I had this episode where Tate Donovan had to be, he was down here and there was things going on. And my mother said, well, I just applaud you as an actress and the challenges you have to meet, and you meet them, and I'm proud of you. I don't have to like what you do, but I do appreciate it, and I hope you don't mind if I don't tell your if I tell your father not to watch these episodes. And I was more than happy to have her do that. I do not want my father ever to watch these scenes. I'm never going to watch them.
But no, I'm just not the type. I'm not the actor
that people go to and like, we need a sex scene. Just
Well, me either. I'm not the actress.
Well,
no.
And then now look at you now.
Yeah, well.
Look at you now with your leather hot pants.
I think Allison and I should do a sex scene together.
Right here.
Right.
Stick around. When we come back, Jesse Tyler Ferguson and Alison Janney in a huge sex scene.
Both Michael and Lizzie were good at serving up double and triple entendres.
Your Masters of Sex co-star, Michael Sheen, love that guy.
Do you?
I do love him. He can dress me any day. Wow. Anyway, he was here on the show, and he said, lovely guy, very witty, and he was talking about your friendship, and he said that he gave you a sausage maker for your birthday, and I thought, is that one of those stories that he made up? Because it was a great story about how he gave you a sausage maker, and I thought maybe that he just said that because he was on a talk show, or did he really do that?
Did Bruce, your dresser, ever get you a sausage maker?
In a way.
Yeah, right? No,
This is so stupid. No, he did not.
Well, maybe this year Christmas is
Yeah.
right around the corner.
You never know.
Yes, I enjoy a sausage, a tubed meat of any kind.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of my favorite food, and so Michael one year bought me a beautiful sausage maker so I can grind my own meats.
I wouldn't. Thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
You're very well known for playing Tony Blair in a number of films. You also play a real person on this show, William Masters. I'm not sure that you've ever played a character so entrenched in sex. Certainly not Tony Blair, for which I'm grateful. Is there anything about...
As far as we know.
Right. Right, at least as part of the film. Is there anything about playing this character that makes you blush at all, or is embarrassing at times?
Well, you know, I mean, I've always found whenever you do scenes that are to do with sex or sexuality or nudity and that kind of stuff, I mean, there's the usual kind of slightly awkward, embarrassing things. But with this series, even though that's the subject of the study, obviously, and the surface of what is going on, it's actually the challenges of being intimate with someone, being vulnerable. It's sort of a more emotional and psychological kind of vulnerability and intimacy that becomes the hardest thing to reveal. As always, as an actor, you're trying to strain towards being as honest as you can, take as many risks as you can, and to really put yourself out there and do something that has sort of some sort of meaning and value to you, certainly. It has to matter to you. And it's when you do that, when you reveal things through the kind of mask of the character about yourself, that it feels the most vulnerable and exposing. And there was a lot of that as the series went on.
As Masters of Sex became nationally known, I enjoyed a little bit of my own fame, basking in the show's limelight.
They're pioneering researchers of human sexuality. Michael Sheen and Lizzie Kaplan star as Dr. Bill Masters and Virginia Johnson in the TV drama Masters of Sex.
It is.
Written in a book by you.
It is hard to believe at times, but you know, you write a book and you have a fantasy of what it would look like on screen, but then to see it actually come true, it really is a miracle.
And a super successful series that started with a simple article.
I was writing a story almost 20 years ago for Newsday about the retirement of Dr. William Masters, and I wound up writing a book that came out in 2009. And Showtime developed it as a series, and here we are now on our way to the Golden Globe. Yeah, right here. And it was right here that the first scene for the whole series began right here. I was over there watching on a monitor, and Beau Bridges was over here. I remember Michael Sheen right here asked me for the first time, basically, what was Bill Masters like? I think they've squeezed every good piece of drama and every little detail, even every joke in the book, and squeezed it and put it into the script.
So if you watch the first season, it's only about this much of the book.
There's a lot more to come.
But you'll have to wait for season 2 this fall. In Sands Point, Elisa DiStefano, News 12 Long Island.
With a hit show on their hands, Michael Sheen and Lizzie Kaplan were now TV stars. I got the impression that Michael, for all of his success on the British stage and screen, still wanted to be better known in the States as a great actor. On the other hand, Lizzie Kaplan seemed almost surprised by the success.
About awards a little bit. We've got Golden Globes and SAG Awards coming up next. And we all feel like, if you look at our prediction center, a lot of people feel like you and Michael and the show are gonna be seeing some of those.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. I think especially the Globes, they love first-year shows. They love shows that are very stylish like this one. And I think a character like yours that's so dynamic, has a lot of personality, is going to appeal to them.
Well, that would be really exciting. And if it doesn't happen, I guess I can call you and ask you what happened.
The critical acclaim came from all over. I wrote a piece for Life about the real Bill and Ginny. Probably my best interview was on NPR's Fresh Air.
This is Fresh Air. I'm Terry Gross. The new Showtime series, Masters of Sex, that premieres in September, is based on the book about sex researchers William Masters and Virginia Johnson by my guest, Thomas Maier, who's also a consultant for this series. Until Maier's book, Masters and Johnson's research techniques remained shrouded in secrecy. But he was able to uncover information through interviews with their friends, family, and former colleagues, as well as extensive interviews with Johnson.
How has the demand been running?
Wonderful.
CBS filmed me at home for this big story on its Sunday morning
TV
program.
was black and white, and attitudes toward sex were too. Their book, Human Sexual Response, detonated rather than just appeared. They seem so tame. Dr. Bill Masters and Virginia Johnson, deliberately cooling down a hot topic.
If one is looking for pornography, one's going to have a long look.
There's nothing of a very exciting nature in this book.
Oh, but there was. And to their own story as well.
Masters and Johnson dealt with virtually every aspect of human sexuality.
Thomas Maier wrote a biography of Masters and Johnson.
Instead of the male being the more powerful of the sexes, what they were clinically showing was that women actually had a greater capacity for sex. They found out that older people can enjoy sex.
Maier's book inspired the Showtime drama Masters of Sex. Soon after he hired Johnson, a divorced mother of two without a college degree, Masters pressured her to have sex with him.
Two of us should undertake the research ourselves.
As part of their work.
She said that she really didn't want to have sex with him, but she didn't want to lose this job.
In today's terms, that would be...
Yes, definitely would be considered sexual harassment.
But in 1970, Masters divorced his wife of 29 years and almost immediately married Johnson. By then, their names had long been linked professionally. Masters and Johnson, like Procter & Gamble, a brand.
They taught couples how to touch one another again, literally how to communicate physically, where it had broken down.
Playboy's Hugh Hefner helped bankroll their work. As the national dialogue about sex became more candid, they informed the conversation.
You have just done what Masters and Johnson would call a premature ovation.
And then came the bombshell. The couple who taught other couples about sex was getting a divorce. In 1992, after 21 years of marriage, Masters left Johnson for another woman.
Regardless of the tragic way their love story ends, fundamentally, their story is about bringing medicine and science into discussion of sexuality.
Masters died in 2001, Johnson in 2013, their once famous names practically forgotten. These are the names we know now.
Premarin Vaginal Cream treats vaginal changes due to menopause.
Ask your doctor about Viagra.
I can't get you off my mind.
We've participated in the study many times.
My name
With
is on
higher
that study.
expectations, the show entered its second season.
We could have an affair.
Lizzie seemed to have an increasing sense of the depth of her real-life character.
Get a chance to talk with her at all?
I did not. She passed away right before our show premiered, actually, a few months before. And no, there's not a ton of information about the two of them, personal information. They really believed in letting the work speak for itself. And so Tom Maier, who wrote the book Masters of Sex that our show is based on, that's pretty much like as much information as one could get about the relationship between the two of them. They didn't give interviews about their personal lives. And so we all read that book, and it's amazing. And that was kind of it. I mean, Virginia had no interest in being involved with the show. It seemed like she wanted to live the rest of her life out of the spotlight, especially after she gave all those hundreds of hours of interviews for the book. And so I was hoping that when the show came out, maybe she'd get swept up in people liking it, and maybe she would like it, and she would want to, be best friends. But unfortunately, I never got the chance to see if that would come to pass. And it's very, very sad. We were all extremely sad about this woman who we had spent so much time with in our brains but had never actually met.
Showing. We've participated in the study many times, but at your apartment, something was different.
Virginia does not want to have an affair. This is work for Virginia. This is her life's purpose. She really is fighting for her dignity in that moment.
We could have an affair. Millions of people do.
He lives in a world where he sees what he wants to see. And I think he hopes that other people will go along with that, or certainly not question him. And so in that moment, he's made to confront something. I think it scares him very much. Of course, we're not having an affair, Virginia. We never were. I'm a happily married man.
Also in that moment, because of the power dynamic and the push and pull between the two of them, as soon as she pulls back, he has to pretend like that's, what he never wanted to begin with. They're constantly negotiating with one another, but very rarely is the negotiation on the table. It's always done sort of underneath what they're saying. That's when I think our show is at its best, when it is very comfortably living in how ambivalent these types of relationships can be.
In the writer's room, Michelle and her crew still debated how best to interpret Bill and Ginny while staying in the basic parameters of my book.
Bill Masters and Virginia Johnson were enormously complicated and conflicted.
You don't see that very often on television, where knowledge and intelligence is an aphrodisiac.
It's one of the great, strange love stories, if you can even call it that, of all time.
This is why I love you. After all these years, you still surprise me.
I'm Michelle Ashford. I am an executive producer and writer on the show. This is our writer's room. We have color-coded cards. Each card represents a scene. I'm a little bit obsessive about the cards.
You're gonna go with a little bit?
Freud probably said it best.
There are no accidents.
I think the storytelling is incredibly rigorous on this show.
I've never labored so intensively over stuff as I have here.
There's one card that says Master Sits. that's the scene. And it just made me realize that the show exists on such a deep psychological level that Master Sitting can become a full
Very dramatic,
world.
yes.
Well,
That was a hard scene.
that was a hard scene.
All I'm saying is, whatever this is you have with Virginia, you've got to weigh it against all of this.
These are all flawed people, like everybody's flawed, but they're still rootable.
Yeah, and I would certainly say that in showing people with all their flaws just laid bare, there's an incredible relatability to it. Because people go, well, in my darkest moments, I am exactly that creature.
I am my father. You know it. And now my son knows it too.
The lovely thing is they say one thing,
they do another. Their behavior indicates a third thing. This is where the synchronicity with actors in television becomes so essential. We're very blessed with a cast that is remarkable. What it becomes is this incredible feedback. You watch what they do, you incorporate that in the next thing you write, and eventually you don't know who's really informing who anymore. It becomes this incredible collaboration.
Also, if you strip away everything titillating about sex.
You said strip and tit.
Yeah, I did say both. If you take away all of that, then something as small as a touch or a look or a glance becomes so sexy.
There is one thing I can't live without. It's you.
I think season 2 is very different from season 1. They're in a totally new environment. Their relationship is completely upended. Their work is completely upended. And it's sort of like watching a whole new story.
I think season 2 is really about negotiating that conflict between how much of this is about their career and the work and how much is about their relationship.
You're taking my pulse.
More like flying blind.
We talked a lot about starting the season 3 years ahead, or all these discussions took place, and then we realized people will probably want to know what happened at that doorstep.
How do they each justify the fact that they have feelings for each other?
Bill, we could have an affair. Millions of people do, but
I think you may have misunderstood what happened between us.
Are they having an affair?
I don't know, I feel protective of them all of a sudden.
Yeah, what do you think, Amy?
No, I don't think it's just an affair, because I think they are really investigating something important.
The work is part of the thing that maybe makes them connect, but there's also something bigger at play.
I have spent really more time analyzing Virginia Johnson than my relationship with my mother.
It's mentally exhausting. It's a hard show to write, but it's not like any other show.
While the relationship continued to intensify between Bill and Virginia, Season 2 brought about many other changes, including more actors added to the cast. No longer would the show take place at the Washington University Hospital. Instead, Masters and Johnson would move their study to an all-black hospital in St. Louis, and later to a clinic of their own.
pulse.
No instruments.
Perhaps the biggest change was the time jump from the mid-1950s in Season 1 to the dawn of the Kennedy era in 1960. It was a challenge for both Michelle and the audience.
Well, we make a time jump in Season 2. It starts very much right on the heels of where Season 1 ended, but then we do make a time jump during the season that allows us to get further down the road, because there's a lot to cover.
Welcome to What the Flick, everyone. Masters of Sex. Everett Avely, William Bibiani, Ben Mankiewicz. Okay, so we moved ahead 2.5 years. Because we jumped 5 months, and then I think we went...
It was 5 months at the beginning, and then they went ahead 1 year at a certain point, and then
to October. So 2.5 years basically.
This episode was. No, I think they probably decided that there were things that had played out in terms of like the characters and what they needed and what they got, and they decided to let's create a whole new set of dramatic problems by going ahead 2.5 years and deal with and start there.
I'm just sort of fascinated by this season and the way that everything about it seems transitional. The first 6 episodes or so were all about will Bill be able to find a new home for his study, etc. Right. And then he finally finds a new home, and even then we have to cut forward 2 more years just to get to wherever they feel they need to be dramatically.
Well, I'll tell you my theory. Freud was a bad lover. And one night, he caught his housefrau with her hand in her drawers, and he's been punishing women ever since.
The second season opened with great enthusiasm from the critics and a load of publicity.
The ad campaign for Masters of Sex Season 2.
I was focusing on the T, she wasn't on the T.
I'm really excited to come back and start to dig deep into this world that we've created of these characters.
I'm really enjoying being back on Masters of Sex. It's been quite a ride for Mr. Scully.
I didn't spend 15 years grooming your career so you could piss it away on hookers.
The sets are beautiful. One of them is a hotel room to sort of indicate the kind of bizarre love triangle that's formed between Libby, Masters, and Virginia. I'll tell my husband you're his new secret weapon, Jenny.
My name's Frank Ockenfels. I was lucky to be the photographer this year.
Frank is lovely. The first thing he did was pull out vintage Vogue magazines and say, we want to shoot you like this. So he's okay in my book.
Perfect.
Well, the second season, things, as always, are on shifting sands between Bill and Virginia.
There's a part of me that loves this character so much that I really want the best for her, but as an actress, I don't want the best for her because that would be really boring.
Vaginas don't bite.
In season 2, we take all the things that you love and turn it up to 11.
The role of Bill Masters' long-suffering wife, Libby, was expanded into a modern way at the urging of Caitlin Fitzgerald.
The material that they've written for me has been so amazing, and she's been on such a huge journey in the 2 seasons we've done, so that is just like candy for an actor. What are you suggesting? I slept with no one to get this part, if that's what you want to know. I had an initial audition, and I like walked out of it, and I was like, I'm such a good actor. I was like, that part's mine. And then heard nothing for months. And was like, okay, I guess not. Had a callback like months later with the director, and then was working like a month later.
Probably the biggest casting surprise was Sarah Silverman.
Bringing sexy back. The actress/comedian has signed on for the upcoming 2nd season of Showtime's Masters of Sex as a recurring guest star. According to The Hollywood Reporter, Silverman will play Helen, a palm reader and former lesbian lover of Annalee Ashford's character Betty. Are you excited to see Sarah Silverman back on the small screen? Sound off in the comments and stick with us at Celebified for more TV news.
Jocko Sims and Keke Palmer played roles that helped reflect some of the racial tensions in St. Louis at the time.
As far as Masters of Sex, I did 6 episodes of that, and my character arc is pretty much I'm a domestic, I'm a nanny for Dr. Masters' wife, and I take care of their baby, but also this season kind of goes into a little bit of the civil rights movement. So without giving too much, my character kind of invites Dr. Masters' wife into understanding that maybe she didn't have before.
I was a huge fan before I came on, and
Masters of Sex became the place to be for several accomplished actors from Broadway and television who wanted to join the cast.
It was one of the best scripts I'd ever read. And then when I came on, it just exceeded my dreams.
During this time, I was writing a different book about the Churchills and the Kennedys, but continued to promote Masters whenever possible. Joyce and I even visited Annalee Ashford backstage when she appeared on Broadway. But season 2 is best remembered in my mind for going to LA with recent Fordham grad Reed Maier. We hung out for days at the Sony backlot watching the show being filmed. Reed was a favorite with the crew. We had lunch with Sony's top TV executive and even met with other Sony producers preparing a show for my book, All That Glitters. But the highlight was the party Sony hosted for Masters of Sex. It was held on the set of the show, and I chatted with our pal Teddy Sears. I also talked with famed director Michael Apted about my Churchills and Kennedys book. Reed and I had a great time as we both looked at the road ahead for us.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Fitzgerald from Showtime's Masters of Sex, and I would like you to remember that things have not changed as much as we think since 1957.
I think I most want people to remember that Masters and Johnson were real, that they did real things in the real world. They were radical, but they were incredibly brave pioneers, and we should all be very grateful to them because we've all benefited.
The thing that I would like people to remember from my show is, I guess, everything except the nudity.
In the vast history of Hollywood, one of the constants has been the love story.
Love sometimes silly.
Boy meets girl, girl meets gorilla, and all sorts of love stories. The American Film Institute gives an award to the 10 best movie and TV shows.
I'm going to stop! Dive into the
And in 2013, it recognized Masters of Sex, a strange love story indeed. The AFI Award was one of several honors our show won, which underlined its wide impact and prestige.
Can't beat the view.
Good work, everyone.
One of the most exciting nights was when Allison Janney won an Emmy for her role in the show. Joyce and I had met Allison on the Sony set while filming, so it was a great thrill to see Allison win.
In a drama series are
Allison Janney as Margaret Scully, Masters of Sex.
And the Emmy for Outstanding Guest Actress in a Drama Series goes to Allison Janney.
This is Allison Janney's first Emmy nomination and first win in this category.
Thank you to the members of the Television Academy for recognizing me in this role, and I have to thank Michelle Ashford and Sarah Timmerman, who called me up and pitched me the role of Margaret Scully. Is perhaps my favorite role I've ever played. It's truly a gorgeous role, gorgeous writing. Thank you to all the writers for the incredible storylines, to my incredible acting partners, especially Beau Bridges, who I adore. You're so generous and lovely. I couldn't have done any of that without you. And to Teddy Sears and David Nevins and Matt Blank of Showtime, and the crew guy who got me a shot of bourbon before my first sex scene was extraordinarily important to me. He was so great. I was like, let's roll it hot this time, buddy. And the DP who lit me beautifully in moments where I needed to and hid just everything that we needed to. And I'm truly grateful, and cheers. Thank you.
And we'll see more of these lovely ladies if you keep watching.
Who did you play that was, you'd say, closest to you?
I think the character in Masters of Sex, not that I haven't had an orgasm before, let's be clear about that.
You've had one.
I have. But I loved how quiet Margaret Scully was, and wondering why she was not, something just didn't feel right about her life, and she was just curious and wounded, and so there's something softly tragic about her, and there's something about me that I always tend to be a little the Eeyore in life, a little sad about things, and wondering what does everyone else have that I don't have, and how can I, she just was a lovely, easy character to slip into.
I got a call first I got an email from Lizzie Kaplan saying, I'm doing this great new show, and you're about to get, our creators are going to call you, just do it, just shut up and do it. Lizzie's very funny with me, and I adore her. And then I got a call from Michelle Ashford and Sarah Timmerman, and they pitched me the role of Margaret Scully. They hadn't written it yet, and they told me what the storyline was going to be like.
Let's talk about Masters of Sex. Congratulations on that role. Now, this is a role, did you understand what was involved when you signed on? Because nudity was involved.
I know, and there was no script when I said yes. I spoke to Michelle Ashford and Sarah Timmerman, who were the creators of it, and they said that they wanted to write this character for me, and there would be nudity. And how did I feel about that? And I said, not great, but I would do it. And they made it seem like I would have total control. And then you have to go through negotiating a nudity contract, which is quite extensive and a little
little scary. I mean, you have to, it gets down to, Allison Janney will only show left side boob, not right side boob. Ass can be shot from above, but not down below. You can.
And is these lawyers working it out?
Yes. I was talking with my lawyer about this, how I felt. I was just.
Yeah, we got left side boob. They're giving us a hard time on right side boob.
I know. I want to know what's wrong with your right side boob now. I love that stuff.
Oh my God.
That is so crazy. So you had to work out all of that stuff.
Yeah, it got me very flustered. I'd be like, I've never done this before. I don't know what I want. All I want is I want it to be very dark, and I want the DP to be the best. I just wanted to be lit well and not show more than was entirely necessary.
Have you watched the episodes where you won't look? You won't look.
When I am 82, I will watch it and go, God, I look great. I have no interest in seeing it. No.
Well, you're very beautiful. I think you have. Now, do you worry at all? This is the thing that occurs to me sometimes, is I can sometimes, when I'm doing something that's a little racy or whatever, I channel my parents, and I think my parents are watching right now. Does that ever occur to you when you're on a show like Masters of Sex?
Oh my God, my mother,
that your mom might see this?
Yes, my mother couldn't. When I told her I was doing this show before it came out, before she knew that it was actually a very cool and respectable show, I told her what it was called, and she couldn't even say the name of it. She would tell her friends, well, she's doing the mom show, and then she's doing this other show with Beau Bridges, and it's a show. The mom show though is, I mean, like she would not talk about it, and I know she's seen it and she's very proud of my work on it. My father has, but we don't talk about it.
Right. None of those things are. Man, do I come from the same family?
God,
yeah, we don't discuss anything.
No.
My parents tell people I'm in real estate.
Beau Bridges was also nominated for an Emmy for his role and provided many memorable moments on the show.
Emmy Awards, 2 Golden Globes, and a Grammy. He's the son of the legendary actor Lloyd Bridges and the brother of Academy Award winner Jeff Bridges. This year, Beau received his 2nd Emmy nomination for his guest role on Showtime's Masters of Sex, which airs Sundays at 10 p.m. How'd you get into that Masters of Sex role?
They called me. At the time I was in New York. That's where they did the pilot. I was on Broadway in How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. I was doing that. That was my night job, and then my day job was in the pilot of this. It's a wonderful story. I remember reading the book about human sexuality that Masters and Johnson came out with. That's what the show's about. So I was interested, and as I read it, I looked at my part and I said, well, I'm playing the mentor of Masters and the provost of this major university, and it looks like this will be fun. And that was it, and then I did it, and then we were all excited because we got picked up, and my wife and I went to a Christmas party, and the execs all came up and they were like, giving me pats on the back and saying, we're so happy to have you with us. You were so great in the pilot. And I'm getting puffed up a little bit. My wife says she kind of saw it coming. And then the executive producer says, we have a really interesting twist for your character. And I'm thinking, there's all these sexual things happening behind the scenes with these people, and I'm the provost of the university. I'm probably going to be getting it on with some of the university cheerleaders, some of these co-eds or something. And I said, oh, what is it? And they said, you're gay. My wife lost it because she knew where my head was going.
I think it's ridiculous that people sometimes are defined by their sexual preference, when we should all be defined by our capacity to love. Right now I'm playing a closeted gay man on Masters of Sex. In the 1950s, that was a tough time to be a gay man. I grew up in the 50s. I remember we didn't talk about homosexuality. It just wasn't a discussion.
We were nominees for the Scripter Award, and Joyce and I flew out to Los Angeles for the awards ceremony, where Masters of Sex was celebrated.
It is my great pleasure to welcome you to Doheny Memorial Library for the 2016 USC Library Scripture Ceremony. Tonight, I'm very happy to introduce our very first group of television finalists, the writing that defines them and the original writing that inspired them.
I sat next to Michelle Ashford while Joyce faced us across the table with producer Sarah Timberman.
Real-life physicians and scientists Virginia Johnson and William Masters appear in the television adaptation of the nonfiction book Masters of Sex. The story explores the nuanced playing out of human physiology in the lives of the scientists in the process of discovering it. In that way, this show too is something of a mystery, one of behavior and psychology, and one that unites science with the art of storytelling in a particularly enchanting way.
I'm leaving. Flying to Mexico tonight and then on to Las Vegas.
No.
Bill, you're right about me. In many ways. How I love the work and the accomplishment and the recognition, but where you're wrong is thinking that I want those things in place of happiness. I want to be happy. You know, life bigger than work. I can't be a whole person without that.
Virginia, I can't let you go.
You have to. If you love me, like you say that you do, if you want to put me first, you won't get in my way, you'll let me go. I want to go.
During an interview, I was asked about the key to my success.
Do you share your first draft with someone, or do you wait until you're into a second or third?
Oh no, I show it particularly to my wife, Joyce, who's the best editor I know. And then I give it to professional editors as well.
For new writers, would you recommend that they write something that really resonates with them, whether it's a coming-of-age drama, or should they write for the market, for a certain genre that they know?
Well, I don't think you can ever write for the market because you never really know what the market's going to particularly want. Because I have a day job as a reporter for Newsday, I wrote what I wanted to write, which is basically about America in the 20th century. So I've written about Masters and Johnson, but I've also written about the Kennedys, the Churchills. I've written about Dr. Spock, the baby doctor, and I also have one. I've written a book about the Newhouse media empire, and that hopefully will soon be a television series as well.
So you would advise a new writer, don't try to conform to what you think Hollywood or the literary world wants. Really go for what your own instincts.
Yeah, the only way you can be true to the reader, I think, is to be true to yourself as a writer. So I think I think a good rule of thumb is if it interests you and you feel really passionate about it, then that's what you should pursue and tell it. And first of all, report it out as thoroughly as possible, research it as thoroughly as possible, and then write the hell out of it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
It is my great pleasure to welcome you.
Piggyback on the sexual revolution.
We are the sexual revolution.
Season 3 began with high hopes as I arrived on the set. More than I imagined, this season would have a lasting impact on the series. We're here on the set of Masters of Sex. Chris, can you just explain, who you are and what you do?
Oh, I'm Chris. I work with props. I'm the assistant.
I felt
prop
comfortable
master.
enough to kid around with the cast and crew.
Yes, this is Michael's hero glasses, sunglasses.
Hero glasses. I feel like that.
Those are kept in here. This is his pouch. So anything the actor's handles or touches will keep in here, all his personal props. And this is bag number 1 of 2. He has so many props. He's 2 bags.
He's a 2-bagger.
Yes.
Thank you, Joyce. Backstage, my wife Joyce was fascinated by all that went into making a show like this.
So Chris, tell me about specific details that are so specific to the time period to bring it out.
Well, we'll bring them out of our products like this, which will help from the time period. So that'll help sell the fact that we're actually in 1966 for right now. But we'll look at books for research for the architectural design, you know, perhaps a type of wallpaper that was used quite a bit at that time period. Yes, that's a detail right there. Yep, going down there. And the colors, like you were saying, the peach from your house.
Yes, you don't see that sort of stuff. And sorry.
I'm sorry, say it again?
The faucets being the 2 hands where it's marked hot and cold.
Right, exactly.
That's so terrific.
Yeah.
We first met Angela Sauer during the filming of the pilot on Long Island, and each year she said hello.
I'm Angela. I'm Lizzie Kaplan, stand-in, and next week, Sunday, August 16th, on Masters of Sex, I'm in the first 30 seconds of the episode. You can see me say a couple of lines. So
how fabulous is she?
I'm really excited. The Marshfield Fair.
I'm sorry?
Candy apples. It reminds me of when I was little, and my dad would buy them for me at the fair. They had this rich, crackly toffee coating. I'm practically drooling just thinking about them.
Not exactly the lubrication we were looking for.
Thank you, Holly. Feel free to get dressed now.
We became very comfortable on the set, sitting behind the directors and taking it all in. I was impressed how they replicated so many of the little details from my book. Including old copies of Masters and Johnson's work. Lizzie Kaplan earned an Emmy nomination as Best Actress in the role that I created. I was pleased because she acted so nicely towards us. So here we are on the set of Masters of Sex with Lizzie Kaplan, who plays Virginia Johnson. 4 years ago, we started talking about doing my TV voice.
4 years, yeah.
Can you imagine? It was on Long Island that we were first met, and now here we are in season 3.
Older, 4 years older, 4 years wiser.
Thanks, Lizzie. Appreciate it. I don't mean to drag it. Like little church mice, Joyce and I sat in the dark and watched several scenes as they played out live on the set. And then we watched them on the TV monitors. And then back to watching the live acting before our eyes. All right, we're here at the set of Masters of Sex.
Here we go, everybody. Background, you're doing great. Here we go.
During much of our stay, we simply watched Lizzie and Michael and others in the cast as they practiced their scenes. The film crew carefully shot each scene from several angles. I'm always impressed how actors are able to remember their lines. By season 3, the dynamic between Masters and Johnson was changing. Virginia was being wooed by a millionaire businessman played by Josh Charles, whose wife happened to join them at a dinner for 4. I always liked scenes that came directly from my book, which I knew were true and not made up. Coming back to Sony each summer was like magic. Big street signs in the sky heralded our success.
We're at the Culver City Hotel in Culver City, and it's right next to Sony, where we've stayed for the past week. It's been great, the fact that it's so close. We've had a great time, and we've done lots of good business things for Thomas. And of course, the set activity is just so fabulous.
The year before, Sony President Steve Mosco had lunch with me and Reed, and he suggested this time I stay at the boutique hotel next door to their Culver City studio. Joyce and I dressed up for the evening soiree at the Television Critics Party, held outside next to a giant reflecting pool. We met up with my pal, Newsday TV critic Vern Gay, and we chatted with actors Beau Bridges and Josh Charles, who we had watched perform on set earlier in the day. I also spoke with Showtime chairman Matt Blank, who I had met a few times before. At the famous Beverly Hilton Hotel, Joyce and I were also thrilled to attend Showtime's presentation for the critics.
Hi, Joyce.
Hi, here we are at the TCA event at the Beverly Hilton Hotel. Up
There we
next is...
So the study up until this point was very much only theirs.
Hi, Joyce.
I posed for pictures with producer Sarah Timberman and caught up on things with showrunner Michelle Ashford. They were always gracious to me as a guest. They knew Sony was developing another of my books about the Newhouse media empire, and during my stay in LA, Joyce and I would have lunch with Warner Brothers chief Peter Roth about my Churchills and Kennedy book. Each year, Michael Sheen said hello, and we got to meet other people in the cast.
I'm paying you for the Cadillac of sex research. That's what I expect to get.
Josh Charles was a big addition this year, and he was joined by actress Judy Greer. We also hung out with director Susanna White during this shoot.
Monday. Before the new season of Masters of Sex.
By season 3, Annalee Ashford was much more prominent in the show.
When you're not so shy.
From a sassy assembly line worker making kinky boots on Broadway.
A respectable doctor watching naked prostitutes.
To a prostitute turned carnal research collaborator in Showtime's Masters of Sex.
Why would a woman lie about something like that?
God almighty, this is...
Annalee Ashford has been a master on stage and on screen.
From a bit part in the pilot to a much more sophisticated role as Betty, she was always very funny and friendly to us. That winter, Drew and Leah had joined us backstage to greet Annalee in a Broadway part that won her a Tony Award. Like Caitlin Fitzgerald, Annalee was always glad to see us.
It's been such an honor to be on a show that not only honors the history of the characters that we are exploring, but also has, such an integrity and a high quality of storytelling. It's, just been such an honor.
Some of the good humor surrounding our show was noticed by other programs.
Welcome, Marge. Homer, no need to take your pants off.
It's not what you think. I just had a big lunch.
Just a series of questions for now.
Then the pants come off. Now, let me be blunt. Are you happy with your romantic life?
My problem used to be too much satisfaction.
We hear that a lot.
But I'm afraid not so much lately.
Do you self-gratify?
Yes, I do. Everything but masturbate.
This all started with our poor kids traumatized by a budget summer camp.
So many perfect marriages ruined by kids.
We tell them it's not their fault when, of course, it's always their fault.
What you must do is return your children to this camp and face down their demons.
Wait.
There's so much more you can do when you don't think about sex. That's why nuns are so successful.
You have to take the kids back to that camp.
Well, it beats hanging out with them.
Now, if you'll excuse us, we have some deviants coming in.
Hello? Anybody here? Yeah, I brought my lady. She used to be the helicopter ride in front of the supermarket. Whoa, just finished. All right, deviant out.
Wide open in the end zone. Touchdown, Patriots. Beautiful pass by Tom Brady.
Yeah, Brady!
He's awesome. I can't believe Giselle gets to sleep with him. I wish I was a supermodel.
Hey, it's a commercial. Jerome, switch over to the red zone.
Screw that. I say we put on the bone zone.
What's that?
Oh, it's awesome. They show every sex scene on TV without all the boring dialogue and plot.
Okay, once again, nothing is happening on Homeland, but over on Masters of Sex, Lizzie Kaplan is hooked up to electrodes and getting it from a guy who sounds American, but probably isn't. Hey, we're gonna split the screens now, because my producer's telling me on Game of Thrones, we got a malnourished albino plowing a girl in a tub as he names dragons. Up, there's a Bone Zone alert for girls, which we'll ignore, because it's Gabby Hoffman Donald ducking it. Last time we went to that, we lost a lot of subscribers. And we're keeping an eye on the Nick. We don't want to bring you dead boobs, but if they're alive, we'll get you over there.
E quase nada sobre mulheres. Usually so the woman could get back to whatever it is she'd rather be doing. Ela não sabe quase nada sobre ciência. I'm not sure why you chose me.
Instinct.
Even though I don't have a college degree.
Are you interested in the job or not?
Mas tem muita química. Masters of Sex. De segunda a sexta
In Brazil, Masters of Sex sounded one way.
Nur die Frage beantworten, was mit dem Körper passiert, während wir Sex haben.
In Germany, quite another.
Ganz heiße Geschichte.
Diese Studie wird niemals als Wissenschaft anerkannt und sie wird man als Perversen abstempeln.
Dr. William Masters, er ist der Alpha-Hund der Muschi-Medizin.
Gynäkologe engagiert ehemalige Nachtclubsängerin im prüden Amerika der 50er Jahre. Wir sind Wissenschaftler, forschen wir. Von den Kritikern gefeiert. Die wahre Geschichte der sexuellen Revolution. Masters of Sex. Staffel 1 und 2, jetzt verfügbar bei MyPrime. Entertainment ohne Limit.
Masters of Sex appeared in more than 30 countries around the world. And my book was translated into Spanish, Russian, Italian, French, Chinese, and more. Each country offered its own take on my American
Los
story.
especialistas del sexo están de vuelta.
With promotional ads that were revealing about the culture where the show appeared.
Masters of Sex. Nueva temporada. Este mes en HBO.
En ce moment sur Canal Play. Suivez nos séries.
Vous avez fait semblant d'avoir un orgasme, c'est courant comme pratique.
Si vous voulez vraiment être
Some
intellectuel
versions
de
were
sexe,
dubbed with
il va
voiceovers
falloir
in their own
trouver une
tongue.
femme comme associée. La femme se débarrasse de cette corvée. T'as été un vrai lion et va qu'à ses
The
occupations.
dialogue somehow sounded more intriguing in French.
Je sais ce que c'est.
Je dirai à mon mari que vous êtes sa nouvelle arme secrète.
Why would a woman...
Other versions appeared with subtitles in various international
Get a man to
languages.
climax quickly. Usually so the woman could get back to whatever it is she'd rather be doing.
In the Netherlands, a psychology professor in sex and gender studies gave this impressive lecture about Masters of
Ik moet hier
Sex.
even wennen aan dit licht, maar ik zie u toch wel een beetje.
I was particularly
Jij zei
amused,
net,
even
hebben toch heel wat
pleased,
mensen
when
het gezien, maar
critics
is het
and
vaginale
academics
orgasme niet
offered
bestaat?
their opinions
Of
about
zoals
Masters
een
of
collega van
Sex.
mij zegt, het vaginale orgasme
I
bestaat
had no
wel voor
idea
mannen,
these conversations
niet voor
were
vrouwen.
taking place
Voor vrouwen
around the
zijn alle
world,
orgasmes
but I was
clitoraal.
immensely proud of the book's impact. Whether it was Russia, Africa, or Latin America, the critics and audiences abroad welcomed Masters of Sex for all 4 seasons.
Continúa. Nueva temporada. Masters of Sex, temporada 2, ya disponible como y
If you're looking for guilt and shame, don't worry, there's still more of that to come on Masters of Sex Season 4.
The following program.
Modern style.
We entered Season 4 not sure what to expect.
Well, when we left Bill and Virginia in the finale of Season 3, everything had sort of blown up for them, both professionally and romantically.
We're moving into the end of the 60s, into the 70s now, so the world is changing around them, partly because of them.
I think that this season feels like a real return to form for our show. We have new characters coming in that are really wonderful, and they're huge roles in the show. Bill and Virginia each get new partners. I think all the new energy is going to be really exciting for the audience. We're definitely digging it a lot this season.
We are going into 69 and 70, baby.
Let's roll sound. And action.
On the set, we met up with Annalee Ashford, who was pregnant in real life, and old pal Teddy Sears. Joyce and I spent days roaming around the Sony backlot and chatting with friends like Angela and director Michael Apted, who brought his elegant style to the show, as did director Colin Buckley. We posed again with Lizzie Kaplan for the 5th year in a row, starting with the pilot. Joyce and I toured the Sony studio where Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune are produced. At night, we went to the TV critics party and chatted with Michelle and Michael. Later that summer in the Hamptons, I would realize the wide reach of our show when actor Alec Baldwin said it was his wife's favorite. Just how the show would end still seemed up in the air.
That's what we were talking about that earlier, about the issue of endings. Many of you are working from original text or adaptations or previous things, and so how does that? Do you guys all have your ending, like where your characters are going?
I think it's a combination of things. First of all, we are working in a business, and there all of a sudden a lot of business requirements come into this decision about your studio and your network and who's making profits and how they make profits. And so how many episodes you get is not just a creative decision. It actually is informed by a lot of very big corporate business decisions. That aside, though, so I think all of us, and this is a huge difference between cable and network, and we're all here in cable, and network is a whole other animal. But yes, I think we know we would not go for more than 6 years. I mean, we just wouldn't. I think The Sopranos sort of set us on this path. I think this was sort of the beginning of all of this, which is a contained story, an ending that the creator had thought about for a long time, but it's great. It is like there are novels, and we get to figure out how they end it.
I have no idea where they are.
As hoped, Season 4 turned out to be an excellent one, full of plot twists and surprises. But the season ended with Bill and Virginia getting married. It seemed to Showtime like the natural way to end the whole series, even though there was still many years to go in my book. A final decision hadn't been made about the show when Joyce and I and Michelle Ashford traveled to Washington University in St. Louis for the 50th anniversary of Masters and Johnson's original book. After being ignored for years, Masters and Johnson were finally honored by the university, which announced an annual lecture series in their name. Shortly after, Michelle and Sarah called to tell me the show was over. Michael sent a gracious note praising my book and wishing me well. Lizzie's note was even more heartfelt. She wrote, "Thank you so much, Tom. Obviously, none of this would have come about if it weren't for you. Thank you for writing such a wonderful book and giving me so much to draw upon over the years. Virginia Will, somebody I am forever in awe of and forever grateful for. What a challenge and a joy this show was to make. Good luck with all your new fancy projects, and send all my love to the fam. Kisses, Lizzie." Nearly 4 years later, we met Michael and Lizzie at a Manhattan event for their new shows, but tribute was also paid to Masters of Sex.
I remember very early on, as soon as we met, really, we if you're lucky, you meet someone just in real life, not just as actors, but you sort of immediately click and feel like you can share things and you have enough shared, experience to kind of connect. And we definitely had that, I think. And I think that was made more extreme by the knowledge that, well, we're going to do this show and it's about this stuff, and we need to become very comfortable with each other very quickly. And that we were just very fortunate, I think, that did happen.
Absolutely. And the longer, 4 years since it ended, so 8 or 9 years since it started, which is so crazy to me. That just, it's mind-blowing. And I don't know why I assumed that we would just vibe and get along immediately, which we did, but God, that could have...
It could have gone really badly wrong.
Really bad. I mean, like the worst. Yeah. That would have been, if that wasn't there, if that wasn't our baseline, that would have been, like, that would have been horrible. Yeah. I think of the things that we've seen together, and if you had to do that with so many that you really couldn't stand.
And this relates to what I learned from Lizzie was that I on set can be quite unlikable. I can be a pain in the ass. I take things very seriously, even though I think, quite funny generally. But when I'm working, I can get overly serious and earnest and intense. And Lizzie made me laugh constantly when we were doing it, and that kind of, I think that really helped. It kind of loosened me up a lot, and it allowed me to be a bit more playful with the character, even though the character was all those things as well. The actual working experience was hugely enjoyable, and not just the working experience, but also I think it bled into the show. I think the direction that the character went in for me was as a direct response to that. I think it's a feeling like having the edges knocked off me and the screws loosened a little bit that Lizzie sort of did to me. I think that sort of translated into the character.
You are a delight. That's fantastic. It took you 4 years to say that to me. I think that probably mine is a bit of the flip side of that. I learned how to take it more seriously. I came from a comedy background, and it's like behind the monitors between takes, it's just as important to have like the best zinger off camera, and it's exhausting. I realized like how much energy I zapped by doing that, and I just learned to take it more seriously while still having lots of room to have a good time. We had a really good time on that show. Probably took it for granted a little bit, but I do miss it. I think about it. I mean, any new job, like to just show up and know that your partner is going to be prepared, whatever, but like to bring something surprising, and it's you're going to feel something in every scene, and that is not a given in this. We were so, and everybody on that show was very hyper focused. There was no, now I don't know if it's just a product of getting a bit older, but your job sort of fits into your greater life. But that was just, Masters of Sex for me was like all in, all I thought about, on set, off set, like it was a fully all-encompassing experience. So thank God it was collaborative.
It all reminded me how fortunate I was with this amazing story. Oh well, maybe we'll come back for more someday.
The world needs now is love, sweet love.
but for everyone. What the world needs now is love, a sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just